Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into your shared sources to pull out the really valuable stuff, the clear, actionable insights you need, without you having to read through everything.
That's right.
Today, we're zeroing in on financial basics, specifically for young adults. We're looking at that critical time, right around 18, when the choices you make can have huge leverage for your future wealth.
Exactly. And the sources we looked at, they boil down that huge topic of personal finance into like a clear 8-step plan. It's really designed for someone just starting out, or maybe for you if you're guiding a young person.
Okay.
So our mission today is to get past the usual generic advice. We want to give you the practical how and the economic why behind these specific 8 steps.
Sounds good. How are we breaking it down?
We'll look at it in 3 parts. First, setting up the essential financial plumbing, you could say.
Okay, the infrastructure.
Yeah. Then second, building the right habits, the discipline, and finally, sorting out a long-term strategy for earning and growing your money.
All right, let's dive in. Let's unpack this blueprint. Where do we start? What are those immediate foundational things you need to do, like the moment you turn 18? Right,
Yeah.
Part one. The sources kick off not with saving money, interestingly, but with something else. Step one, establishing credit history.
Right.
Now, that feels a bit backwards, maybe, for someone who probably doesn't have much money yet. But the sources are really strong on this. Start building credit immediately at 18. Why? Why the big rush?
Well, it's all about time. Credit history isn't built overnight. It's a long game. And the advice here is super practical.
Okay.
They say avoid just being an authorized user on your parents' card. That might give you a score boost, but it's not really your history in the same way.
Ah, interesting distinction. So what's the recommended way then?
Use a secured credit card. That's the specific tool they point to.
A secured card. Okay, that sounds safer. For listeners who aren't familiar, how does that actually work? How does it help build history faster or maybe safer than other ways?
Yeah, it's about showing you can be responsible while basically removing the risk for the credit card company. You put down a deposit, let's say $300.
Okay.
That $300 become your credit limit. Then you just use the card for something small and regular.
Yeah.
Maybe a streaming subscription, maybe gas once a month.
Right, something predictable.
Yes.
Exactly. And here's the critical part. You pay it off in full every single month. No exceptions.
Yeah.
Paid off completely.
By doing that, you're sending signals to the credit bureaus.
Uh-huh.
1, you use credit. 2, you keep your utilization, how much you use versus your limit very low, which is great for your score. And 3, you always pay on time. That positive data starts the clock on your credit age. And how long you've had credit is actually a pretty big factor in your score later on. That's really clear, practical advice. Okay, so credit history is ticking. Step 2 moves to something fundamental, banking.
Mm-hmm.
The strong advice is open your own fee-free bank account. Seems obvious, maybe, but why is getting away from parent-linked accounts so important for an 18-year-old? Well, it's partly psychological, right? Financial independence starts when your money is actually separate under your control.
True.
But beyond that, the emphasis on fee-free is really key. Young people starting out often don't have big balances. Losing $5 or $10 a month just to bank fees, that's a serious drag when you only have a little bit saved.
Yeah, that adds up fast.
Definitely. So the sources suggest looking at local credit unions. They often have better terms, fewer fees than the big banks. Or, check out some of the online-only banks. They often have high-yield savings options and keep costs really low. The goal is just make sure every dollar you earn stays yours.
Okay, foundation set. Independent banking, check. Credit card ticking responsibly, check. Now let's get into the engine room actually building wealth.
Yeah, this leads right into part 2, which seems to be about growth and discipline. Step 3 hits on probably the most powerful idea in finance, compound interest.
Absolutely.
The advice is to set up a tax-advantaged savings account. The sources mention an ISA, which is a UK thing, but for U.S. listeners, it's like a Roth IRA, right?
Exactly. A Roth IRA is the direct U.S. equivalent. The
Wow.
principle is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the advice is do it as early as possible. Right. It just boils down to time.
Yeah.
The power of starting early, you just can't overstate it. An ISA or a Roth IRA is basically a special container, right?
Mhm.
It lets your investments grow without being taxed each year, or maybe taxed much later, or not at all when you take it out, depending on the type. The crucial insight from the source is that those first few years of growth, of compounding, are worth the most because they have the longest time to snowball. Can we put some numbers on that? Like, say someone starts putting away $100 a month at 18. What happens if they wait until, say, 25? What does that 7-year delay actually cost them over, a lifetime of working and saving?
Oh, the cost is It's staggering, really. If you assume maybe a 7% average return per year, which is a common historical benchmark,
Okay.
the person starting at 18, yes, they save for 7 fewer years compared to the 25-year-old starting point, but they end up with significantly more money by retirement age.
Even though they technically put in less total money over those first 7 years?
Way more money at the end, because that money put in at 18 has, what, 47 years to grow versus 40 years for the person starting at 25. Those very first contributions the 18-year-old makes, they often become the biggest part of the final pot. They can double, triple, even more compared to contributions made later, just because of that extra compounding time. You literally cannot make up for that lost time later, no matter how much more money you try to throw at it when you're older. That really drives home the urgency.
Okay.
But you can't grow money if you're constantly losing it to debt.
Sure.
Which brings us to step 4. Debt avoidance. Crucial. This sounds like really strong behavioral advice. The sources basically say, avoid consumer debt. The rule is, only buy what you can afford to pay for outright, right now.
Mm-hmm. But hang on, isn't some debt maybe okay? Or even necessary? Like, what about a student loan for a good degree, or maybe a car loan if you need it for work?
Right.
Why are the sources so absolute about avoiding all consumer debt?
That's a really good question and an important distinction. The sources are laser focused on consumer debt here, meaning credit card balances you carry over, high-interest store cards,
Yeah.
personal loans for stuff that loses value, holidays, gadgets, things like that,
Yeah.
debt for consumption.
Gotcha. Not investment debt, like maybe
Right.
education or a house down the line.
Exactly. They treat consumer debt like a bad habit you need to break before it starts. High-interest debt actively works against compound interest. You're basically paying someone else the returns you should be earning.
Right. It cancels out your savings efforts.
Totally. So for a young adult, the focus is on forming the habit. Establishing that simple rule, if I can't pay cash for it right now, I can't afford it. It builds a kind of financial shield. It stops you from getting stuck digging out of debt for years. Stops you from inflating your lifestyle too early. And that discipline, that habit, feeds right into the next step, step 5, which sounds like the overarching principle. Consistently living within means, or, living below your means. Yeah, this is less a single action, more like the foundation for everything else.
How so?
Well, living below your means is the only way to guarantee you have money left over. If you earn, say, $3,000 a month, but your essential spending is $2,500.
You have a $500 gap.
Exactly. That $500 surplus is your seed capital. It's what you use for investing in that ISA or Roth IRA. It's your emergency fund buffer. It's what lets you take advantage of opportunities. Without that gap, without living below your means, all the advice about investing is just talk.
It's just theory.
Right. It forces you, as a young adult, to actually think about needs versus wants, to prioritize. And it generates the actual cash you need to make steps 1, 2, and 3 happen.
Okay, so we've got the foundation laid, banking and credit. We've got the discipline starting, avoid debt, live below your means, start compounding early. Now, part 3 seems to shift towards maximizing income and making smart long-term plays. Step 6 is about gaining work experience early. Seems pretty straightforward, get a job, earn money. But what specific angle did the sources take on why getting work experience early is so critical beyond just the paycheck?
They really emphasize that it's not just about the money, although that's obviously important for saving and investing. It's about building professional maturity.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
It means learning the soft skills. Things like being on time, dealing with customers or clients, working in a team, handling basic workplace communication. For someone applying for their first real job,
Yeah.
having demonstrated work experience, even if it was part-time, maybe even volunteer work, can often matter more than slightly better grades. It tells an employer you're reliable. You understand how work works.
And that gives you an edge.
A huge edge, potentially. It can give you more negotiating power for that first proper salary. And that first salary sets the baseline for raises and earnings for decades to come. So getting a good start matters a lot.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, this leads into what's probably the biggest and maybe most stressful financial decision a young adult makes. Step 7, college consideration. Yeah, this is a big one in the sources.
The advice isn't just go to college. It's to really think hard about whether it's necessary and what the return on investment, the ROI, will be, especially before taking on huge student debt. Exactly. The cost of college has just exploded, right?
Right.
It's changed the whole calculation compared to maybe a generation ago. The sources are really urging you, the listener, to ask tough questions.
Like what?
Does the specific career I'm aiming for absolutely require a 4-year degree? Or is some of the pressure just societal expectation? Everyone goes to college.
Right.
They recommend actually trying to estimate the total debt you'd take on versus the realistic starting salary in that field. Is the debt load going to mean your loan payments eat up, say, more than 10% or 15% of your take-home pay right from the start? If so, you really need to question if it's the best path financially.
That's a very practical filter. So if the traditional four-year degree looks like maybe a bad deal financially for a particular path, what other options do the sources suggest besides just, the standard learner trade idea?
They do mention trades, but they also highlight more specific, maybe newer paths. Things like specialized certifications, apprenticeships in high-demand tech fields. Think focused coding boot camps, certifications in advanced manufacturing, certain healthcare support roles that require specific training, but not a full BA.
Things that get you skills quickly.
Exactly. Paths that often lead directly to a decent salary, maybe 2 years, not 4 or more, and crucially, potentially without the massive debt load. The point isn't that education isn't valuable.
Right.
It's about making the education decision a financial decision, too, making sure you're choosing the most efficient route, financially speaking, for the outcome you want, being deliberate, not just drifting into debt. That's a really critical perspective for young people today. Okay, finally, we loop back to the growth side with the last step. Step 8, simple investing. So you got your career path sorted, hopefully earning decent money, living below your means. Now what, the sources say? Adopt a simple strategy using low-cost index funds. Yeah, this brings it all together. And the key words there are simple and low cost.
Why simple? Why not try to be the next stock-picking genius?
Because for most people, especially beginners, complexity leads to mistakes, emotional decisions, buying high, selling low, trying to time the market. It rarely works.
Okay.
Low-cost index funds are effective because they're designed to just match the performance of a big chunk of the market, like the S&P 500 index in the U.S., or maybe a total world stock index.
So you get instant diversification.
Absolutely.
Exactly. You own tiny pieces of hundreds or thousands of companies automatically. It takes away the stress and guesswork of trying to pick winners. The strategy recommended is basically set up automatic contributions, like that $100 a month we talked about earlier. Make sure the fees on the funds are super low.
Okay.
And then let time and compound interest do the heavy lifting for you over decades. So the game plan is automate it, diversify broadly, keep costs minimal, and then pretty much leave it alone. That's the essence of it. Don't tinker.
Yeah.
Hashtag outro. So if you pull back and look at all 8 steps together, you see it's a really well-rounded plan, isn't it?
Yeah, it flows logically. You've got those immediate tactical things you need to do right at 18. Get the credit going with a secured card. Set up your own fee-free bank account.
The infrastructure. Right. And then those are paired perfectly with the long-term strategic habits. Aggressively avoiding consumer debt. Always living below your means. The discipline.
And then channeling that surplus into smart, simple, low-cost investments. It's a roadmap that's designed, I think, to avoid overwhelming a young person while making sure they capture the biggest advantage they have.
Which is time.
Exactly. Time.
This has been great. A really practical deep dive, pulling out the clear actions from those sources. Thank you for sharing them with us and letting us break it down for you.
My pleasure.
So, here's a final thought for you to chew on, something that comes right out of what we've discussed. If you had to pick just one of these steps that gives the absolute biggest long-term boost, purely because of the time factor, is it setting up that ISA or Roth IRA super early, like at 18, to max out on compound interest?
Interesting question to ponder.
And if it is, how does that single decision, made potentially before you even have a real career or significant income, actually shape your financial reality decades down the line? Something to think about. Until next time on The Deep Dive.